Good afternoon and welcome to the first session after lunch. As has just been explained to you, it's on a panel of speakers and discussants on the prospect of jobs for the young and the elderly. I'm Stuart Middleton from the Manukau Institute of Technology in New Zealand, and it's a great pleasure to have such a distinguished panel of people joining me here today. We have 5 people to speak to you today, and so that inevitably will cut down the amount of time we have for questions, and so we think we'll have oral questions taken from the floor at the end, rather than us perhaps developing a whole lot of written questions that we, in all likelihood, would not get time to address. Since 2002, Korea's rate at which the population has been ageing has reached the fastest in the world, and so that makes a very timely consideration of a topic like this, and it also raises the issues of balancing the needs of the elderly against the needs of the young, and so I think we'll be in for a very interesting discussion. And it's my great pleasure to invite the first speaker, Raymond Torres, who's the Director of the Research Department in the International Labour Organization. I invite him to address us now. Please welcome him.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for introducing the session, which is going to discuss 2 main issues, the issue of young people and older workers as well. And in the presentation, I would like to go through 3 main questions. The first one is what the situation is vis-à-vis young people and older workers, and also to really emphasize the point that we're not talking about a minor issue, relatively marginal. We're talking about a fundamental issue which is structuring our societies. The second question, of course, because then, of course, comes the question of policies, is some discussion of some of the factors which shape the situation of young people and older workers. Then at the end, I will kind of discuss with you 3 possible scenarios. So the situation, to understand the situation, first you have to understand the big picture. And the big picture is one where 35% of people of working age today do not have a job. So it's much more than unemployment. We're talking about people who are either unemployed or inactive, in other words, outside the labor market. They do not even participate. 35%, very significant number, with some countries, in particular in some South European countries, but also in a number of Central European countries as well, having relatively high non-employment rates, and other countries lower non-employment rates, so therefore a relatively big picture across countries, but overall this is a very large number. And why young people, older workers are important? Because if you look at the composition of those people who are either unemployed or inactive, the bulk of them are young people or older workers, or for that matter, prime age women. So young people and older workers, although they represent something like 35–36% of the total population in advanced economies, they represent 56% of non-employment. So when we talk about unemployment or inactivity, the vast majority are young or older workers. Young means 15–24 according to the traditional definition. Older means more than 54. And if you add to that prime age women of the middle age, we're talking about more than 85%. So non-employment is primarily, in terms of composition, a question of young people, older workers. Even adjusting for young people who are studying, you still have this very significant number. So the problem of under-representation in the labor market is mainly young, older, and to some extent also women. Also, the variation of cross countries is interesting. For if you look at prime age men, so those men between 25 and 54, they represent only 13% of non-employment. So in other words, in most countries, prime age men more or less have a high participation rate, a high employment rate. In most countries, about the same number. The difference across countries comes from prime-age women or young people or older workers, or all three at the same time. And you look at the situation of Korea, it's interesting that prime-age men have a high employment rate. Actually, Korea is a good performer in terms of prime-age men. Korea is also a relatively good performer in terms of older workers. Its employment rate is relatively high vis-à-vis the international average. The gap in employment in Korea comes mainly from two groups, young people and prime-age women. These are the two groups for which there is underrepresentation, or it performs below the average vis-à-vis the other two groups. So I think in the case of Korea, it expresses like this. In other countries, it's different, but that's the situation today. So it's not only a question very important for the labor market, but the question of young people, older workers, and women, for that matter, is a major economic issue at large. It's not just a labor market issue, it's a major economic issue at large, not only because obviously it's a waste of human resources necessary for productive development and for economic growth, but because it affects, of course, the funding of social protection and in general the funding of governments. It's, if nothing is done, the deficit of pension systems will only grow, because you need, of course, a funding base that grows in line with population aging. So I think mobilizing these groups is particularly important today because of the necessary economic growth, but also to fund social protection, especially in view of population aging, where all available resources will have to be utilized. In addition to the economic dimension, there is also a very important social dimension as well. And here there is a bit of a paradox, because I said before prime-age men. Prime-age men, they are usually employed, but they are overemployed, you could say. In most countries, they suffer stress, health at work. There is a famous Korean philosopher, Byung Han, who's written a book which is called The Stressful Society. He describes the problems of overwork, stress at work, intensified work pace, and so on, which is affecting many working people, and explains to some extent the very significant increase of health conditions and even invalidity in a number of countries, from Nordic economies to Japan, Korea, and some American countries as well. So it's an issue for those who have work, they are overworked, and those who are underworked, of course, is a major issue in terms of status in society, precariousness of lives, mental illness problems, and so on. So there is a problem at both ends, those who are overworked and those who do not have enough job opportunities, young people, older workers, and of course women in a number of countries. In addition to, to this particular social impact, there is a more general inequality effect, intergenerational. Young people, of course, do not find in their way. You have, and we discussed this morning, Mr. Chair, an issue of unemployment among high educated young people. So people who study and so on and do not find adequate jobs. And so it's a major source of frustration and a risk of erosion of the social contract, because of course there's a promise in a way built into society that you study and therefore you have a good job, but obviously this is not happening, certainly not in Korea, but even worse in other countries as well. So this is a major issue from the point of view of inequalities. There are some research that points to impacts on fertility rates, depopulation, because of course in these conditions natality rates and fertility rates are falling. Therefore, it aggravates population aging. And in the very, very end, it has an impact on the fragmentation of political systems, which is happening in many countries, with protectionist reactions and so on. So we are talking about an issue which is not a technical issue, a mere labor market management problem. It's more a social and political problem in the very end. So moving to the second part of my presentation, what explains the tendency for excluding young people, older workers, and prime-age women as well. There are traditional explanations which have been alluded to for years and years and decades even. Of course, cyclical factors we know have an impact. Normally, downturns in the cycles have a disproportionate effect on those groups, women young people and older workers. And when there is a recovery, they tend to lag behind the recovery. So there is a kind of asymmetric impact of cyclical factors. And of course, the recent crisis was a major factor in this respect. But I think there are more fundamental issues. It cannot be just this. And one of them is the high and rising incidence of what you call in Korea non-regular employment, what you call in other countries precarious jobs or temporary jobs or interim employment and so on. And the groups in question, young people, older workers, women, tend to be overrepresented in these kind of jobs. And therefore, these are more unstable labor conditions, so which may explain why actually they have a lower employment rate. And even in New Zealand, where actually you have more equality between different types of jobs, it's also happening in a country like New Zealand. So here it's a big issue, the issue of job quality, job stability is very important, and the deterioration in this is very important in explaining the employment situation of those groups. And then another factor, of course, which is, newer but still important, is new technology, because it's redesigning the skill profile of many jobs, it's redesigning the sectoral profile of jobs, and therefore, in particular for older workers, not so much the case here, but in many other countries, they tend to be excluded in this process. And for young people, if they don't have the skills which adapt to this change, of course, they have difficulty entering the labor market. Even though they may be high educated, the labor market may be moving in a different dimension, therefore they may have difficulties in accessing these jobs. In particular, those that have low skills, the so-called needs, who are neither in education nor in employment or training, and which are a major worrisome factor for many countries. There are also supply factors which explain this situation. One of them is this complexities of social protection. This can be, it has a double-edged effect, complex double-edged effect. It can be very positive. For example, family-friendly policies clearly help some of the underrepresented groups. And we know that for Nordic European countries, for example. They can also support participation through active labor market policies, because these are measures, systems that incentivize people to stay in the labor market, not to drop out from the labor market. Korea is a very good example, because after the Asian crisis, it really developed its system of employment security centers, of active labor market policies in the aftermath of the crisis, and it served the country well. Even though employment increased, it quickly was reduced thanks to this policy. So I think it can play an important factor. But of course, this social protection system has to be well designed, through a complex engineering of incentives and design features, so that you avoid benefit dependency, a very important issue and risk as well. The other supply element is the education and training system. This is a major issue. And probably this is an area where there will be, for the next 10 years at least, there will have to be many changes. Because the digital revolution means that the skills which are needed are different. You need more interpersonal skills. You need really to take advantage of the platform economy. But also the kind of education system which also tends to exclude a number of people who are not able to participate in quality education is, of course, in question. The digital economy means that there is a large benefit for those who participate in a platform, and the platform economy by definition needs more and more people. It's not like physical capital. And therefore, the extension of quality education to as many people as possible is another major challenge. And of course, lifelong learning. The changes that we are witnessing with many jobs that will change in the future mean that you need continuous learning throughout career, and it's easy to say, complex to do, although some countries are managing better than others, and that's also a very significant challenge. We should not forget also about the needs, the young people neither in education or training nor in the labor market. This is a hard group. It's very heterogeneous groups, but we know from policy making that once young people get into that group, it's very difficult for them to get out of it, and they tend to continue having disadvantage in the labor market throughout their life. So you need specific programs, second chance schools, for them, specialized and intensified job search support. and other schemes in order for them, through the targeted approach, to be again reinserted into the labor market. Increasingly important dimensions are new technology, as I said, population aging, and new forms of work. Because all the systems I'm talking about, social protection, education and training, labor regulations, have to change in view of the fact that in the new economy, in the economy 4.0, the kind of employment relationship which is emerging is very different from the previous employment relationship that required an employer and then a pool of employees, relatively stable. We're talking about unstable relations and also more and more jobs that happen outside the normal employer-employee relationship. On-account work, freelance, crowd work are expanding very fast. And so it's another challenge as well that needs to be taken into account. Just to say that I don't want to give a sense that nothing can be done. Performances are different across countries. Some have employment rates for young people, for example, that are relatively high. That includes, for example, the chair's country, New Zealand, and to some extent, some Nordic economies. Others have a lower employment rate. In the case of Korea, it's relatively low, mainly because people prolong education very late in order to have good studies. So, I mean, it can be a factor. Young people need an education or training, nor in the labor market also there are big variations, again, more or less the same countries facing this problem of young people need an education nor in the labor market, which also means that policy settings can do something. Although the problem is growing in all countries, there are different responses and therefore different outcomes. For all the workers, again, some countries are doing better than others. Korea is a good example, successful performer in terms of keeping older workers later in life through gradual retirement schemes, through second careers and so on. Other countries like Belgium, for example, do much worse in this respect. So I think we have also to learn from these country experiences. And the same for women. Some labor markets are more, let's say, gender balanced than others. And here I have to say, you know, in the case of Korea, it is an issue. And I know also that women tend to be particularly affected by the high incidence of non-regular employment, part-time jobs that do not correspond to the career jobs in an enterprise. Vis-à-vis other countries that have good family-friendly policies and relatively stable jobs for all. But again, it's an issue which is growing in all countries. I mean, something can be done, but it's a growing issue in all countries. The third part of the presentation, I know I'm exhausting my time, Mr. Chair. I don't know how much. 4 minutes. Okay. I would like to then discuss and elaborate and reflect on what could happen in the future. And I think, you know, just to simplify for the sake of discussion and exchange, one can devise 3 scenarios. The first scenario is the most likely one, because very difficult for policymakers to do anything about this, and it takes energy, political compromise, political willingness for results that happen in the medium term. So it's not easy for the policymaking community to change these things, and some of the changes require major reforms, not easy to them. So the business as usual scenario would of course be the most dangerous. It would intensify the inequalities I was talking about, which are already happening. It would lead to problems of early retirement in a number of countries, growing problems for young people to enter the labor market, and overwork prime-age men, intensifying. So it's a bit of a paradox scenario where you have some people stressed at work, having a lot to do, working very long hours, and other people not having enough opportunities, and not enough opportunities in particular for decent jobs, and therefore leading to inequalities, growing frustration in societies. And we see the repercussions already in many countries associated with the business as usual scenario. A second scenario is one might call adaptation, which is using the traditional policy tools that we have been using for years and for decades to address underemployment, from active labor market policies to labor market flexibility, for example, like deregulation of the labor market, for example, avoiding benefit dependency, social benefit dependency through reducing benefits. This, of course, would give a certain plus in terms of jobs because the incentive to work would be very high, obviously, among all. But it would even aggravate further the inequalities vis-à-vis the first scenario. Because we know it's an issue in the United States, for example, and in other countries that undertook this kind of approach, that you can give jobs, you can have higher employment rates, but it's at the cost of more inequalities, and therefore more difficulties in building political consensus for any pro-growth policies, from trade liberalization to technological change and so on and so forth. So it's a kind of political economy issue here that we're talking about, this pure adaptation scenario, which may be undertaken. But it's certainly there as a possibility. The third scenario is what one might call policy innovation. So you may go into more unknown territory in the sense that you will need to kind of innovate in terms of policies in order to address a transformation in the workplace and in the economy, which is very deep and which is taking place, and which requires a number of policy tools. For example, the question of reform of education and business, I was saying before, the question of reforming the education system, you will have to reform that very deeply, and so it's difficult. But of course, it starts to happen already in some countries where the kind of tertiary education system starts to bring people who otherwise would have stayed outside the tertiary education and go into a professional direction, so that you have easier to find jobs through tertiary education. So here the branding is very important. In countries like Korea, Northern Africa, for example, or France, the word technical education, even that word, technical education, is devalued among families and in the culture. So you have to find a labeling for this kind of more professional education, which is acceptable to that culture and society, so that it's easier for people to go into it. And it is happening in some countries already. Another one, I think very important, is to emphasize more entrepreneurship, innovation. The next few years will be years of significant opportunities associated with the new economy, the digital processes, algorithms, and so on. And therefore, the valuing more entrepreneurship, innovation, new practices is very important among young people, but also among people who are now employees. They may be employees at one point in time, but at other points in time, they may themselves carry out new activities, create new businesses. And I think this is something that needs to be addressed through policies, and in particular, financial policies. I think it would be a good thing from the point of view of finance to have particular financial institutions that are devoted specifically to new opportunities, especially for young people, new entrepreneurs. I think there will be huge potential. If you think about Silicon Valley, many of the innovations come from very young people, and they had access to good finance. Social protection and labor regulations are also an area of tremendous pressure. They will have to be almost reinvented so that they continue to protect people. Otherwise, you will have more inequalities, but at the same time, do so by embracing new forms of work. And this is also happening. The Netherlands had a reform, very interesting reform in 2014, where you try to extend the reach of social protection and labor regulations to new forms of work, and not discouraging job creation, which of course is something you wouldn't want to do. So I think it's possible to do. I wouldn't say it's easy. France has also launched a social protection scheme, which is called personal active scheme, so that whatever the kind of job you have, you enjoy the same type of social protection. So you can unify social protection for all kinds of jobs, and you have more portability of benefits. It starts to operate next year. So again, possible innovation. I have no idea what the impact will be, but certainly it's an interesting policy innovation. Mr. Chair, only to say that the world is changing very fast. We're talking about a completely new environment a new economy which is emerging. Not doing anything would run the risk of continued inequalities and also reactions against pro-growth policies. So I think we are talking about a big risk that we are taking. Policy innovation is important, which is why I think debates like this one is important today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raymond, for setting a very valuable context for this discussion. I'd like to invite the second speaker now, who is Noriyuki Yanagawa, who is the professor in the Faculty of Economics at the University of Tokyo. Would you please welcome Professor Yanagawa?
Thank you, Chairman. And it is a very great honor for me to present my slide at this wonderful conference. And my presentation is much related to the wonderful first presentation. And I much focus on the elderly person, and much focus on the policy innovation scenario. And there are, in my opinion, there are three major problems in order to solve. First one is, as he stressed, there is a technological progress about artificial intelligence, AI, and information technology. And we have to think about the policy or scenario to adjust this technological progress. And the second one is that population is aging, and in particular in Japan, population is declining. So in Japan and also in Korea, it is important to solve how to increase the productivity in this aging population society. And the third problem is even so that the seniors or elderly persons are in good health, and they are very active and able to work. So do they crowd out young workers? Or is it possible to join and work together? Young and elderly person works as a complementarity or not. So in order to solve these three problems, I would like to stress one big issue, or one big policy, is education. Education for middles or education for elderly is very important for solving these problems. In order to adjust to the new technology, or in order to adjust to the new situation by the technological progress, the education for all generations are crucially important. It is sometimes stressed that education for young workers or young persons, or educations for unskilled workers, those are stressed sometimes. But I would like to stress the education for middles or educations for elderly person in order to increase opportunity for working for seniors or elderly person. And by doing that, the elderly persons make rooms for young workers. And the complementarity of younger and elderly persons can be realized, I think. So this is my main point, and I would like to explain more detail about my opinions. So as you know, that's required skills are very quickly changing and significantly changing. So AI will further accelerate this trend. So someone said that there is a possibility of the replacement of human jobs by AI. But other persons say that, in particular in Japan, that since depopulations proceed in Japan, so the replacement of human job by AI should work in favor of the economy, because that there is the excess demand for workers. But I think this opinion is too optimistic. Even though some industrial sectors suffering from a shortage of labor, without the capacity and skills to work in those sectors, neither AI nor human beings can work there. So it is important to get new skills, or skills cannot be replaced by AI for any generations, particularly for elderly persons. Acquiring these new skills are crucial and important. So that technological progress, if changes are big but slow, we can continue to work without our previously acquired capacity. With our previously acquired capacity. So only for young generation, they acquire the new capacity in the new age. So this is very happy situation for all generations. But unfortunately, we are experiencing very quickly changes. On the other hand, our lifespan becomes longer than ever. So we need to acquire new skills whenever they are necessary, no matter how old we may be. This is, I'm getting older, so this is very bad proposal for me. But even if we don't like this, but we have to do this. So that is my key point. On the other hand, as I said, ability of senior or elder generations to increase. In order to increase our GDP, particularly in Japan, we need to create a society in which all generations are able to play a more active role. Because in Japan, birth rate is low, and population is aging and declining. So in order to create this kind of society, we should not regard the elderly persons or elderly generations as individuals needing to be supported, but rather make it possible for them to be more active in ways that suit their actual situations. But it is not so easy to realize this. Moreover, the great majority of elderly persons, as I said, are in good health, and they are able to work normally. If they are healthy, they can work until the age of 75 or 80. But at least in Japan, those seniors or elderly persons are not being sufficiently provided with opportunity to work. So there is a big problem in Japan. So there's, they can work, they have a skill to work, but there is no job for elderly persons, particularly for 60s or 70s. They have a good health, but they have no job. But however, on the other hand, it would be an exaggeration to believe that elderly workers are able to take on any type of work. They are healthy, they are active, but it is necessary to have sufficient skill to continue working and work at different environment, because the technological progress is so quick and the economic conditions are changing. Their skill accumulate, for example, more than 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Those skills are unfortunately too old. So it is crucial to offer opportunities to get sufficient skill to keep working for elderly persons. Maybe 60s or 70s are too old. More younger stages, I propose around 40s. That is a time to accumulate new job, get a new technology or new skill to adjust to the changing economy or new technological environment. As you know, it is well known that Japanese work style is very unique in the world. And sometimes this is so-called Japanese working style or something. And someone said that this is the main reason of the strength of Japanese economy. There are three major points. First one is lifetime employment. That might be too exaggeration. Lifetime employment or long-time employment. That is crucial for Japanese working style. And the seniority rule. This is also, I think this is also important in Korean economy or in Korean business style. And the third one is mandatory retirement. And in Japan, that's normal workers can work until the mandatory retirement because lifetime employment system is working. So that mandatory retirement is now becoming 65. And 5 or 6 years ago, that it was 60. That's, so lifetime employment, seniority rules, and mandatory retirement, those three packages about those three elements are so-called Japanese work styles. And under some environment, it may work very well. However, it becomes difficult to sustain, and it may not work well under the current situation because the technological progress is so quick. So in order to, it is difficult to sustain these three elements. So how should we change? I believe the long-term relationship is important, even in Japan, even in Korea, even in other countries. However, it becomes difficult to keep hiring until 70s or 75 or 80s in a same company. By doing so, elderly persons must crowd out young workers. The key point is the elderly persons, they must acquire new skill for moving out to new companies or new industry or new environment. By doing that, they do not crowd out young workers. But I should mention that it doesn't need to, they doesn't need to be, so that they have to acquire new skill, but they have to acquire completely new technology or kind of high-tech knowledge. They don't have to acquire high technology. As you can imagine that for 60s or 70s, it may be difficult, or it may be impossible to acquire high-tech knowledge for them. I don't say so. They only have to acquire new skills, or they should learn about some skills to adjust to new technology or to survive in new environment. But without that, it is difficult for them, old workers, to move out to other companies, particularly in Japan. So I stress the importance of education or skill-up system for middles and for elderly persons, 40s or 60s, to move out to new companies, move out to new environment for old workers. Ideally speaking, I would like to propose kind of new Japanese working style. I would like to divide working period to the 3 stages. First stage is the first 20 years, from 20 to 40. The second one is the 40 to 60. And third one is 60 to 75. As I said, that even if they are 70s or 80s, they are very active and they are very healthy. They can work. But in order to keep working, and in order not to crowd out young workers, they have to change their stages. At the first stage, and the second stage, and third stage, they may change their working places or working companies. Of course, this is not mandatory. It is necessary to change their working place for all persons. And someone may continue to working in the same situation or same company, even if they become 40s, even if they become 60s. But I would like to propose, by the agreement of both sides means workers and companies, only that time they can continue to work at the same places. Without such agreement, they change the places of working at 40s or around 60s. That could be a system without crowding out young workers, and old workers, elderly person can work at other places, even if they become 60s or 75. Yes. But the 20 years, I think that in order to sustain the long-term relationship, 20 years is sufficiently long. But because the technological progress is so quick, this 20 years might be too long to adjust to the quickly changing economy. It is necessary to offer sufficiently education system or skill-up system to be able to change working places or working companies or their working style for any generations. I stress here that around 40s or 60s is a kind of focal point to accumulate their new skills, new technology. But the technological progress is so quick, so for any generations, the new skill-up system is crucial to realize. In those days, some of such education system to accumulate new technology was offered by companies to their workers, at least in Japan. However, now it is almost impossible for Japanese companies to offer such education system because they're suffering a severe competition to other companies. And moreover, the company do not have sufficient knowledge to teach new technology or new skill to adjust for changing economy. So I believe that it is very crucial and very important to construct such education system as a government policy. And that is an important social security for all workers. That is my proposal. Okay, that's time. Thank you very much.
We're now going to have three 15-minute comments on those two papers, and I'd like to invite Kang-Jin Lee, the research fellow from Jeonbuk Institute, to make the first comment. I'm sorry, I never turned the microphone on. This is Kang-Jin Lee, the research fellow from the Jeonbuk Institute.
It is my great honor to have a chance to discuss on the very prominent two professors' presentations. I like to discuss on the presentations, two presentations mostly, but I like to add some my idea on what I think about the youth and elderly job creations. The two presenters indicates that the youth and the elderly workers will be especially affected by the economic slowdowns, technological innovation like AI and fourth industrial revolutions, and demographic changes. Actually, ever since the global financial crisis, world economy have been sluggish and have little sign of recovering. Except a couple of countries. Majority of the economic experts say that we globally we have about around 3% of economic growth, and Korea will be expecting around middle of that 2%. You know, the Bank of Korea expect we have about 2.7% increase in next year. And actually, future is not much promising. And as you know, the low economic growth rate will limit job creation ability, and that will especially affect the youth and elderly job markets. We have been pursuing efficiency actually in the production side. And especially in manufacturing sectors, and have achieved tremendous improvement in production system, and the trend will be continued, and actually accelerated with the introduction of the fourth industrial revolution and AI. There will be new products and services as a result of the introduction and the utilization of the AI. However, we have very little idea on the scope of the product line. Even though we do not know what products lie ahead, we can say that product will be manufactured more efficient way than now. Technical advancement have been resulting in labor saving, and it will be accelerated also. So that means the job creation will be limited. Recent trend of the relocating the manufacturing sector, like Adidas in the German. They go back to the Germany, and they produce with much less labor forces than before. This means that the shrinkage of job in the global and local context. Also, the current trend of the protectionism in trade reflects the change of the world economy thinking and will change the world economic order. Also, recent data says that the economic growth creates less trade amount than before. Demographic change will trigger change in the composition of the world in the industry. Consumption of the durable goods will be reduced, and service sectors, especially the medical sector, will be increased. Aging society will not well keep the social security means the elderly have to work longer, and elderly job market is being competitive. Korean workers have been forced to have better qualification for the job and adapting to the changing society. Ever since the introduction of the global competition, the workers have to work harder than before, and the introduction of the AI, workers will be forced to work harder. While the rapidly growing era could accommodate the growing youth job seekers, slow economic growth will limit the youth job market. For Korea, we have been recognized from the other country to have a good education system. However, most criticize that the Korean education system is good for the first industrial revolution, not for the AI and fourth industrial revolution. Education should be focused on enhancing creativity mind, and less opportunistic college entry system will be helpful. My idea on the creating some job is government should consider adopting the budget schemes that emphasize the job creation. Each policy should be evaluated in the aspect of the amount of job creation and link it to the budget system. Creating new jobs for youth is very important for the society because it will utilize most creative human resources, and it will be the engine of the social and economic growth. For elderlies, actually we emphasize them re-education, but it is very difficult for them to re-educate. So I propose the participating in the participating only in lifelong learning program, and keep and linking it to the job market. And I have some question about the Professor. Sorry that the Professor Yanagawa did. If you when you divide that like lifetime learning into three period, and there will be some transition, and there will be adjusting cost. So how can you minimize that kind of transition cost? And I think it will be very helpful for Korea. And also we need to consider, we need to learn from the Japan, and recent the Abenomics proposal on the 4-day working system. Is the possibility of applying only, applying to Korea. How you think about that, the aspect? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kang-Jin Lee, and we'll move on along, and the next contributor will be Kyung-gon Lee, the Professor of Economics at Dankook University.
네, 안녕하십니까. 토론을 맡게 된 이경곤입니다. 먼저 이런 자리를 마련해 주신 글로벌 인재 포럼한테 감사의 말씀드리고요. 간략하게 이제 두 분 발표자분들의 논의를 간략하게 요약을 하고서 저의 의견을 좀 밝히도록 하겠습니다. 먼저 이제 OECD 국가에서는 젊은층하고 노년층의 실업률이 지속적으로 증가되고 있고, 반면에 이제 중간층, 또 프라임 에이지라고 보통 얘기하죠. 중간층 연령대에서는 고용률이 높은 현상을 보이고 있습니다. 특히 요즘에 이제 니트족이라고 해서 최근 청년층에서 교육도 받지 않고 그다음에 딱히 취업 활동도 하지 않는 그런 사람들의 비율이 점차 높아지고 있다라는 점에 큰 유의를 유의해야 하고, 또 이런 현상이 인적 자원의 손실, 그다음에 또 재정의 손실, 그다음 사회 불안정성이 높아진다는 점에서 큰 우려를 나타내고 있습니다. 그런데 또 이런 배경에서 이제 앞으로 이제 노동시장에서 큰 어떤 변화가 발생을 하게 되는데, 토레스 박사님께서는 크게 세 가지를 지적을 하셨습니다. 먼저 이제 기술 변화, 흔히 우리가 4차 혁명이라고 얘기하는 인공지능에 따른 노동시장의 변화를 먼저 말씀하셨고, 그 다음에 점점 그 고령화 사회, 점차 그 출산율이 낮아짐에 따라서 비단 이게 우리나라만의 문제는 아니고 다른 OECD 국가에서 공통적으로 나타나는 문제들입니다. 이런 고령화의 문제, 그 다음에 또 새로운 일자리의 형태, 다시 말하면 새로운 형태의 고용 형태가 어떻게 고용 형태들이 노동시장에 큰 영향을 미칠 것이다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 그렇지만 이제 미래 사회가 정말 어떤 모습으로 다가올지는 좀 예측하기 어려운 상황입니다. 그래서 토레스 박사께서는 이제 크게 세 가지의 시나리오를 말씀하고 계신데요. 일단은 뭐 현 상태가 지속이 되면 실업률은 이제 낮아지고 이제 은퇴 연령이 늦춰지는 그런 모습을 띠시고 있겠지만은, 그 팔러시 이노베이션이라는 표현을 썼습니다. 파격적인 정책을 우리가 적극적으로 실행을 하게 되면 아마 낮은 실업률과 그와 동시에 또 사회 안정성도 같이 확보할 수 있는 그런 길이 있을 것이다라고 제안을 하셨습니다. 특히 이제 야나카와 교수님께서는 이 중에서도 이제 젊은 층과 노년층의 그 노동시장과 더불어서 기술 변화의 중요성에 대해서 초점을 두고 말씀하셨습니다. 통상 이제 기술 변화라고 하는 부분이 새로운 스킬을 요구하는 부분이 많기 때문에 고령 사회에서 많기 때문에 오히려 고령층이 좀 불리한 면이 있을 수가 있습니다. 그리고 또 고령사가 그렇다라고 해서 고령사회에서 고령자의 고용을 늘리게 되는 경우에는 또 젊은층의 또 고용을 또 감소시키는 또 그런 또 세대 간 갈등 문제가 발생을 할 수가 있습니다. 그래서 야나카와 교수님께서는 이런 어떤 사회대 간 갈등이 없이, 그리고 기술 변화를 받아들이면서 고용을 다 모든 세대에 걸쳐 증가시킬 수 있는 방향으로 생애 주기에 따른 연령대별 맞춤형 어떤 교육 및 직업 훈련을 공급을 통해 이런 세대 갈등이 없는 세대 갈등이 없이 고용률을 높일 수 있을 것이다라고 주장을 하고 계십니다. 우리나라의 경우에 이제 97년도에 있었던 IMF 위기하고 2008년도 금융위기 이후 보면은 이제 저성장이 고착화되는 모습을 보이고 있습니다. 그리고 또 청년층의 고용률이 또 상당히 낮죠. 그리고 반면에 고령층의 고용률은 의외로 좀 높은 편입니다. 그리고 2013년도 기준으로 우리나라 합계 출산율이 1.19명입니다. 1.19명이요. 그래서 이런 그 합계 출산율 추세를 보면 우리 사회 역시 고령화가 급속히 진행된다라는 걸 충분히 예측을 할 수가 있습니다. 이런 부분들이 이제 앞에서 말씀하셨던 두 분이 지적했던 것과 정확하게 일치되는 모습이라고 생각을 합니다. 그리고 또 우리나라 같은 경우에도 역시 인공지능 혁명이라고 얘기하는 기술 혁신 이런 부분에서 결코 피해갈 수 없는 위치에 있습니다. 그런데 이제 우리나라의 국한에서 이하 논의를 하게 되면 일단 노동시장에서의 큰 쟁점 중에서 직접적으로 설명은 안 하셨지만 노동시장에서 가장 큰 쟁점 중에 하나라고 제가 생각하는 부분은 일단 기혼 여성에 대한 경력 단절 문제입니다. 우리나라의 그 여성들의 교육 수준은 OECD 국가 내에서도 상당히 높은 수준입니다. 거의 최고 수준입니다. 그렇지만 이분들이 결혼을 하게 되면 기존 직장에서 직장을 떠나게 되고, 그리고 나서 다시 어떤 원래 직장으로 되돌아오지 못하고 계속 노동시장 밖에 머물게 됩니다. 그래서 설사 들어온다 하더라도 기존보다도 굉장히 열악한 형태의 그런 일자리를 가지게 됩니다. 자, 그리고 또 한 가지 좀 더 우리나라의 국한에 있을 때 우리가 고려해야 할 상황은 우리나라 산업 구조의 문제일 수도 있습니다. 뭐냐면 우리나라 같은 경우에는 대외 의존 부분이 굉장히 큽니다. 대외 의존이 굉장히 크고 무역 의존도가 굉장히 높은 나라이기 때문에 앞으로 고령화라든가 그다음에 기술에 따른 산업 구조의 변화 그런 것들이 발생을 했을 때 OECD 국가 평균적으로 보는 OECD 국가 이외에 또 다른 또 어떤 특징들을 나타낼 수가 있습니다. 그래서 이런 부분들이 좀 정확히 논의가 안 된 부분에 대해서는 약간 좀 보충적인 설명이 있어야 되지 않을까 생각을 합니다. 자, 그런데 이제 두 분 모두 이런 이제 미래 노동시장에 대해서 어떤 정책에 대해서 여러 가지 정책의 중요성을 강조를 하고 있습니다. 주로 이제 특히 교육 정책하고 노동시장에서의 정책의 중요성을 굉장히 강조를 하셨고 저도 이에 대해서 100% 동의를 하고 있습니다. 그런데 이제 한국의 상황을 고려해서 몇 가지를 좀 덧붙이자라면은 일단 교육 제도에 대해서 일단 이야기를 하고 있습니다. 과연 이른바 이제 예를 들어서 청년층의 니트족이 크게 양상되는 게 과연 교육의 내용이, 즉 대학에서 배우는 교육의 내용이 뭔가 좀 실제 경제 직업 취업 활동에서 부적절하기 때문에 나타나느냐라고 말할 수 있겠느냐라는 점입니다. 저는 좀 그렇지는 않다라고 봅니다. 대표적으로 니트족이 크게 양상됐던 것은 IMF 금융위기 97년도에 IMF 금융위기 이후 그리고 2000년에 들어와서 크게 큰 폭으로 증가를 하고 있습니다. 이런 부분들은 차라리 이런 부분들은 어쩌면 교육의 부적절이라기보다는 기업을 중심으로 한 어떤 기업의 채용 관행, 즉 기업 문화의 변화에 더 크게 큰 원인이 있지 않은가 생각을 하고 있습니다. 최근 들어 경력직을 중심으로 한 채용 관행, 그리고 우리나라에서는 장시간 근로 굉장히 유명하죠. 세계 장시간, 일본보다 더 많은 장시간 근로가 관행적으로 이루어지고 있습니다. 물론 이런 것들은 기업의 어떤 경영 환경이 상당히 안 좋기 때문에 발생한 면들도 있긴 하지만, 이런 기업 경영 환경이 우리 기업의 어떤 근로 문화에 큰 영향을 준다라고 생각을 하고 있습니다. 그리고 이런 영향들이 오히려 청년층의 취업률에 큰 영향을 주지 않은가라는 게 저의 생각입니다. 그래서 저의 의견으로는 교육제도를 개선하는 것, 즉 새로운 기술 변화에 맞춰서 또 그 새로운 형태의 교육 시스템을 개발하는 것은 굉장히 중요하죠. 그래서 이것에 대해서 뭔가 좀 다른 의견을 가지고 있지는 않습니다. 그렇지만은 교육제도 개선 못지않게 중요한 것은 기업의 채용 방식 및 또 근로 문화를 바꾸는 건 역시 이에 못지않게 중요하지 않을까라는 게 저의 의견입니다. 그리고 또 두 분께서 공통적으로 지적하신 부분이 바로 이 기술 변화의 중요성입니다. 우리가 요즘에 이제 크게 시대되고 있는 인공지능이라고 하는 AI라고 보통 얘기하는 그 부분이 과연 노동시장에 어떤 식으로 영향을 미칠까에 대해서 공통적으로 말씀하셨습니다. 근데 두 분 다 약간 저의 느낌으로는 좀 부정적인 효과를 또 얘기를 하신 것 같아요. 그래서 기술 진보가 이제 무엇을 초래하는가? 인공지능으로 대변되는 기술 진보가 이른바 우리가 유토피아로 이끌 것인지 또는 디스토피아로 이끌 것인지라는 것이 가장 초미의 관심입니다. 어떤 사람들은 이제 기술 진보 AI라는 것이 일자리를 계속 없애버리기 때문에 모든 사람들이 실업에 빠질 것이다. 그래서 극소수의 사람들만이 직장을 가지게 되고 그 사람들만이 큰 어떤 경제적 혜택을 누릴 것이다라고 얘기하는 사람들이 있고요. 또 반면 어떤 사람들은 그러진 않을 것이다라고 얘기하는 사람들도 있습니다. 그런데 이에 대한 논의는 계속 진행 중에 있고 저의 생각으로는 아마도 결론을 내릴 수는 없을 것 같습니다. 왜냐하면 기술 발전의 결과를 솔직히 정확히 예견할 수 없는 경제 법칙은 따로 없습니다. 따로 없고요. 그리고 아마 기술이 변함에 따라 가지고 어떤 직업은 분명히 장래엔 사라집니다. 우리가 흔히 목격했듯이 어떤 직업은 단연히 사라지게 되고, 또 반면에 어떤 직업은 또 새롭게 기술 변화에 맞춰가지고 새롭게 또 생겨나게 될 것이죠. 그래서 문제는 이제 어떤 직업이 또 반면에 또 어떤 직업은 기술 변화와 같이 유지되는 그런 직업들도 있을 것입니다. 그렇지만 이제 어느 쪽에 클 것인지에 대해서는 뭐라고 크게 예측할 수가 없습니다. 그래서 사라지는 직업이 더 많다라고 하는 사람들은 좀 디스토피아로 갈 것이다라고 주장을 하시는 거고요. 또 반면에 그러지 않고 유지되거나 또는 새롭게 창출되는 직업이 많을 것이다라고 주장하시는 분들은 그냥 아마 유토피아로 갈 수 있을 것이다라고 그렇게 주장을 하고 계신 거죠. 그런데 그렇지만 일단 기술 변화의 효과에 대해서 일단 명확한 것은 기술 발전이 생산성을 크게 향상시킨다라는 점에 대해서는 어느 누구도 크게 이견을 달지 않을 것입니다. 예전보다 더 적은 노동 비용으로, 그다음에 더 적은 비용으로 더 많은 것을 생산할 수 있다라는 것에 대해서는 아마 대부분의 사람들이 인정을 할 것입니다. 그래서 문제의 초점은 저의 생각으로는 이 향상된 이 생산성 그리고 늘어난 이 생산량이라는 것을 어떤 방식으로 경제 주체들 간에 분배를 할 것인가의 문제가 어떤 이 문제를 바라보는 하나의 관점이라고 생각을 합니다. 그런데 이 분배 문제를 어떤 식으로 할 것인지, 늘어난 생산물을 어떤 식으로 나눌 것인지의 문제는 이것이 순수하게 경제 논리라고는 생각하지는 않습니다. 특히 한국 사회 전체적으로 놓고 봤을 때 전체 측면에서 이제 정치적으로 아마 좀 사회적으로 정치적으로 크게 합의되어서 도달해야 될 부분이라고 생각을 합니다. 그래서 이런 합의가 이런 어떤 구체적인 합의가 있어야지 토레스 박사님께서 처음에 언급하셨던 폴리시 이노베이션이라고 하는 파격적인 정책이라는 것이 도달 가능하지 않을까 생각을 합니다. 왜 그러냐면 폴리시 이노베이션이라고 하는 것은 필연적으로 큰 세금을 요구할 수밖에 없고 또 이런 조세 정책을 쓰기 위해서는 필연적으로 모든 사회 구성원들 간에 어떤 컨센서스, 의견 합의를 잘 이끌어낼 수 있는 역량이 있어야 된다고 생각을 합니다. 그래서 저는 과연 기술 발전이라고 하는 것이 미래 어떤 사회를 만들 것인가를 결정을 할 때 각 한 나라, 우리나라뿐만 아니라 다른 모든 나라들이 가지고 있는 어떤 민주주의 역량이라고 생각을 합니다. 어떤 갈등을 해결할 수 있는 갈등을 해결하고 어떤 그 사회의 의견을 끄집어낼 수 있는 그런 정치적 역량 역시 우리가 역시 고려해야 할 중요한 요소라고 생각을 합니다. 그리고 마지막으로 짧게 좀 덧붙이고 싶은 말은 지금까지 고용 정책, 노동시장 정책을 놓고 보면 보통 이제 고용률을 중심으로 이야기를 많이 했습니다. 그렇지만 고용률을 중심으로 하는 정책은 약간의 한계가 있습니다. 특히 요즘에 이제 삶의 질이라는 측면에서 보게 되면 우리나라 같은 경우에 고령층의 노동시장 참여율이 상당히 높게 나옵니다. 자, 그러면 노동시장 참여율이 높다라고 해서 이것이 바람직하다고 우리가 봐야 되느냐? 저는 그렇게 보진 않습니다. 그분들의 이제 일자리의 질이라든가 그다음에 일자리 강도 그런 것들을 놓고 보면 결코 좀 바람직하다고는 생각하지는 않습니다. 네, 이것으로 저의 토론을 마치도록 하겠습니다. 네.
And finally, we'll invite Moonhee Kim, who's the minister with the permanent delegation of the Republic of Korea to the OECD. Thank you, Moonhee.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to be here to participate as a discussant in this wonderful session. Actually, personally, it's more meaningful for me actually to be here. A person who actually one of the people who create this forum 11 years ago. So it's for me it's kind of work. I mean homecoming day or something. Yeah, so I'm very grateful for being here. I'm Korean, so it's much easier for me to speak in Korean, but I think it's an international global forum, so I'd like to speak in English. So the one thing is the always difficult thing for the last person in this context is that most of the important things are already told by the people before me. So I don't know what kind of things I can add more, but I prepared my comments, so I may continue my comments based on the preparation. So it may overlap or duplicate the previous comments, but that means maybe that whatever they duplicated or revisited means the most important things for this theme. So we all talk about the economic crisis and the effect of economic crisis on youth and elder people in labor market. So still, we have been 8 years since this economic crisis. We are still behind before the crisis. For youth and also for the elderly people, although the participation labor market for elderly people increased, but I don't think if you see the quality of job for them, I don't think that's the reality, actually, the improvement for the elderly people. So I think those two groups has the same problem and difficulties with the economic crisis. At the same time, we are really rapidly changing world now, especially this aging and also digitalization may be the most promising, I mean, the most expected change we are encountering now and in the future. So, which means we're not going to have more people who actually produce more for the economy, which means we have to increase our productivity for individual person, for everybody. That's why we are talking about the youth and the elderly people at the same time, because we all are important to improve our economy and also our well-being too. So especially in Korea, actually, even more difficult situation, I think, because we have the lowest fertility rate and the rapidly aging society. In June this year, actually, Financial Times reported one article about aging society, and with the graph, the wonderful graph, it says it is expected to take 27 years for country, my own country, Korea, to be triple the proportion of 65 over 65 age from 7% to 21%, which means within 27 years, the proportion of elder people in our population gonna be 3 times. While for France, it takes 157 for the equivalent years. So we are really facing the rapidly aging the society now. So for us, it's even more important for youth or elderly people to upgrade or rescale our capacity to produce productivity, I mean, increase the productivity. In addition, we have this rapidly changing technical advancement. So we may need new skills, or we may need to upgrade our own skills we have now. So some studies argue that maybe in 10 or 20 years, the half of job will be replaced by machines. But the other studies said that maybe that's too exaggerated, actually. Some of the job, not only they replaced it, but new jobs may create it. So the recent OECD work, the study estimate on average for the country who participate in the PIAC, that's Adult Skills Survey, done by OECD, 9% of the job may be replaced by machine or some other computers. So Korean case, it about 5 or 6% of job will be replaced by machine, according to the work, the study, the OECD study. So we don't know exactly how much or how much percentage of the current job replaced by the automation, but we know that some of the job may replaced by some other, not human. But we need something not replaceable skills by machine, which means interpersonal or highly skilled skills may more important in the future. So what this change means for us, for education system or for training system or for labor market regulation or policies. So I think we have to think about 2 ways. One is that who are the most vulnerable groups for these changes? I think the most vulnerable groups are that's who are not in education, training, or employment, and also the women with the children, or older people with a low skill, or who are, in general, people with a low-level education, may they affect significantly from these changes. So in this respect, I think the most important is that we have to prepare all students actually with the new skills, that the skills that are required in the future labor market. And also, everybody should get some continued learning opportunity, or we call it lifelong learning, especially throughout their working life, not only for this certain stage of age, but you have to get, I mean, we can get access to any time during our working life. That is the most important element for this left changing society, I think. And the second part is that it's not only for these vulnerable groups, but that the important thing is from the labor market side, we have to see the quality of jobs. We cannot see only the quantity or the number of jobs or the employment rate itself. If you see the woman, for example, so I am talking about inequality in this to youth or elderly people. From the gender perspective, if you see the woman who actually have more access to higher education, if you see the tertiary education graduation rate for women, it's higher than men in general, especially in Korea. But if you see the certain subject, the major, for example, the STEM, I think the science, technology, or engineering, those areas they get more important in the future, because we are living in the technological changing world, and that this AI or those technological advancement gets attention to everybody to equip with some IT skills, and should be familiar with IT skills, but women less likely go to this track. And also, as the previous discussant mentioned, the woman has kind of this M-shaped employment in labor market, which means after graduation, they get into labor market, and after marriage or with children, they quit their career, and then at some point they try to get into re-entry into labor market, but there is a huge difficulties for them. So that we have to deal with all this inequality problem in youth and also the elderly people from the labor market side. And the other point for the inequality issue is that the workers with irregular jobs and also new emerging jobs, the jobs in the platform economy, they may have they may not have enough social protection because the labor regulation may don't ready for them. We have to prepare those kind of new labor, new social protection mechanism for them. That's the one aspect we have to consider for the future changes. This year, actually, OECD set up the recommendation on aging and employment policies in January. It says promoting the employability of people throughout their working lives is vital in an aging society. I think this is the most important key to prepare upcoming new world for us. So for me, now I have to prepare for my second and third jobs from now on. I mean, so I have to participate in some other learning activities to prepare it. Thank you.
Do you have a comment you'd like to make? Right, we'll just get a quick comment from our two speakers in response to those comments, and then we'll have time to take one or two questions.
First of all, thank you for the excellent points. You really enriched the debate enormously, and I would like to go through three issues really. The first one has to do with the issue of number of jobs, job quality, productivity. These issues you raised before, which I think is very important. I think that I would be less pessimistic in terms of the number of jobs compared to a number of studies that have suggested that 40% of jobs would be destroyed. I think it's a bit of an exaggeration. And I would say I would be much more optimistic, subject to the right policies being implemented. I think it's very much policy. But if the right policies are implemented, I would not be too pessimistic about there will be jobs in different sectors, of course. As you said, jobs that will not be replaced easily by algorithms or artificial intelligence. Where it's more of an issue is about job quality and productivity. I think here there is a real risk of a further increase. I think you alluded to a deterioration of job quality, which would be especially detrimental to those already underrepresented in the labor market. And also in terms of productivity, I think still we don't see the productivity gains that would need to be associated with the new technology, not to the extent that happened in the past. And so it's a bit of a mystery why this is not happening. And certainly one can say about job quality, we have already this problem. The second issue I would like to raise very quickly is about the policies. And here I believe that you raised, I think, and I completely agree, the issue of job quality policies, education, and then consensual being type of policy. And I would say, what is the priority? What would be the priorities here? Because we have raised many. The priorities, I think, now would be, first of all, in terms of what can be done now, is to make some of the existing policies, labor regulation, social protection, education, much more universal to reach underrepresented groups. Whereas now they tend to be excluded, for example, we see very different coverages of social protection for different types of work. The same for labor regulations. The second one would be to start to think about the notion of lifelong budgets. In order to correspond to the idea that there will be many changes in the future. And at the moment, what happens as a big inequality in the beginning with needs emerging. And once they miss the possibility to have good education in the beginning, they no longer have a second opportunity. So to flag the notion of lifelong budgets, I think Professor Kemal Dervish is the first who threw the idea. I find that very attractive and probably adapted to this new situation so that people have a second chance to reinsert themselves at different ages. Professor Yanagawa identifies particular age groups, but it could be more flexible, different age groups through lifelong budgets, I think. And then another very important policy would be to reinforce consensus building institutions. Because the changes we're seeing are very complex and go through education, labor regulation, social protection. And perhaps what is the most important is to build or reinforce consensus building institutions so that the various stakeholders can intervene. For example, there is a certain contradiction between the macroeconomic need for extended work throughout career, and on the other hand, the practical reality is that many enterprises continue to use mandatory retirement at earlier ages, for example, in Korea and in a number of enterprises. So I think there are contradictions of this kind which would need to be resolved through consensus-building institutions which tend to be debilitated in the present environment. They tend to become weaker, and actually they would be the opposite. They would need to be reinforced or instituted those consensus. So I would say these three would be my conclusion. Thank you.
Professor?
Okay, I have three quick comments. The first is the response to the question about transition cost for dividing 3 periods. Of course, there is a cost, transition cost, but that's not coming from the system. That's coming from the change of the economy, I guess. You can imagine that from 20 to 70, there is 50 years. Can you imagine that during these 50 years, almost the system does not change? The economic condition does not change? Can you imagine that? 50 years too long to sustain the keeping same situation. As the Professor Torres stressed, that the not changing is a cost in this economy. So that main issue, the main message of this session is, I guess, that positive response for changing, positive response for getting ability to change, that is important, I guess. That's my first response. And the second response is that considering the economy of Japan or China, I think the custom of seniority or custom of respect the senior person is a kind of crucial aspect for considering the working labor economy, labor market. Yes, the seniority is important and very good custom, I believe, even for me. But too strong seniority is make kind of a cost for hiring young workers or young generation, I guess. And the third response is the question about 4 days working system. I think this is not the main message or main point of Abenomics, but the Japanese government is proposing kind of variety of working style. In Japan, the working style of normal workers, we said, is very rigid. That has been a reason for obstacle for re-entering of workers to the labor market. Or, for example, women's, it is difficult for them to re-enter the labor market because the normal working style is too rigid. They cannot adjust to the normal working style. But so we are thinking that making the variety of working style, that is crucial for promoting the more working and increase the productivity of Japan. Thank you.
Thank you for that contribution, and we're at the end of our time. Would you join me in thanking the speakers and the discussants today? And I wish you well as you go forward from here with the certainty that one day we will all be old. Would you please join me in thanking the speakers?